coming tonight. I appreciate your time. This is, I think, lucky number 17 on the span across the world to deliver this session. Um, for those of you who aren't sure why we are doing this, we'll give you a little background. And then we're also going to answer some questions just right up front that you may not even realize that you have. So my name is Millie. I'm your GM for those of you who I've not met, although hopefully you know me by now. About 2 years ago, whenever I joined the team here at the club, a couple of weeks after I started, a retaining wall fell. If you remember, the retaining wall along the pool walkway. And so that was a pretty jolting thing to happen for the first few weeks of being here. But what it did is it kickstarted some thought about what else could happen around the club. This club is 171 years old this year, and the facility is about 150 years old. So there's a lot that can happen. We've seen a lot of troubled areas in the kitchens, on the roof, in the plumbing, the brick and mortar, HVACs, just kind of all over. So we thought that it would probably be the wisest move for the club to get an asset study. So we embarked on a journey with Club Benchmarking, which is a company, and you're going to meet Ken tonight. He's from Club Benchmarking. They do work with clubs all over the nation and actually world, really. They have over 2,000 clubs in their database, and they help us figure out benchmark, best operating procedures, financial and asset controls at the club. So they did last year an asset study for us. They spent several weeks at the club evaluating every single thing that we have on this 14-acre property. And they put a lifespan to it and a dollar amount to it. And from that, we were able to create a capital plan to let us know how and when we are going to care for certain things at the club. When coolers need to be replaced, when lights need to be replaced, when the boiler needs to be replaced, and things like that. It was a startling report, worth about 23 million over the span of 20 years. And we determined that we really need to dig in and take a closer look at this study and figure out right now, what do we need to do? We see there's a lot of deferred maintenance at this club. And so what we are trying to do is show you what we feel needs to be done within the next 3 years and 5 years. This is the time span we're really asking you to focus on, is 3 years and 5 years. We do have information in here that looks at 10-year and 20-year. It's only a glance. Later on, after this event, you are going to receive an email from Club Benchmarking, and it will have a survey regarding what you've heard tonight, and it will also have a copy of this presentation. So you will receive all of this, and you can go back through it, and you can look through it and dive deep into the numbers. So a couple of answers to questions you don't know you have. We are not trying to turn this club into Marion or Philly Cricket or Philly Country. We are not trying to be the highest end, best of the best. This study and this campaign is to get us to a place of normality and comfort, where the club is taken care of and you feel good about what you are receiving at the club. Normal expectations. We are just trying to make the club a really good place and make it successful and viable for another 100 years. That's really what this is about. We do not have a cap on membership. That is a misconception, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. A lot of people think we have a wait list. We don't have a wait list. We've not had a wait list. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we calculate members and how that calculates into dollars and what it really means, because we use a different equivalency whenever we're doing budgets, and that makes a difference for us. We are not super flush with cash like people think. We are surviving and we're doing well, and we have money in the bank, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But what we're talking about is consistency and longevity so that we don't have to keep coming back to the well every time something tragic happens. So without further ado, oh, I'm sorry. How did we come up with this? It's been a couple days since I did this. I'm a little rusty. After we got the study completed and started to look at the capital plan, we engaged again with Club Benchmarking to help us come up with some funding strategies because we knew some big things were going to need to be done here at the club. So the board built an ad hoc committee made up of different people, a cross section of newer members, tenured members, empty nesters, people with kids, kind of a crossover of all of the communities at the club. They reviewed and worked together over many, many days and hours to review tons of strategies. And Joe, our controller, is going to talk to you about that tonight. From those strategies, they came up with essentially one that they felt was the most viable for our membership, that would be the least harsh and impactful on our culture, the culture of our club. So we're not wanting to change that. Also, that we're not hitting our members too hard financially. So it is essentially one strategy with a couple of different options within that strategy for comfort of different levels, which again, we'll talk about. So that's how we found the information. Tom is going to talk tonight a little bit about the club. Ken is going to talk about the state of the club industry and what many clubs do and how it benefits us and kind of how we are measured in clubs. And then Joe is going to talk to you about the financial side of this, how we came about it, and what the actual numbers are tonight. So Tom will tell you this is kind of an open forum conversation. We will talk a little bit about operations, but this is not a deep dive into why is my burger always overcooked. We're not going to talk deep into very specific things about operations tonight. We can have that conversation if you want to engage. We can talk about that offline. But tonight we are not reviewing all of that, but operations will be a little bit of the conversation. I think I nailed it all. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Tom and we'll get this started.
Thanks, Millie.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. So we haven't done this in 8 days. It's our 17th run through this. So, but like Millie said, we might be a little rusty. And also, I think the context I always like to do this is sort of like a family dinner around the kitchen table. You have something you want to chime in or a question, just raise your hand. Really, I think with the size of the audience we have tonight, just push 2 tables together and do it. Unfortunately, though, it's being recorded, so I have to be near the screen. So, yeah, let's dive in and talk about everything that Millie described. So, we always start with the lenses in the glasses that we're going to look at this through. What are we all about at GCC? To promote social activities among the members by providing proper recreational, we can't stress the word proper anymore, proper courts, proper clubhouse, proper indoor, proper bathrooms, proper everything. Additionally, the club aims to foster an active and diverse community through the athletic programs and social and enriching social experiences. And I think that's important because what we're really about, what brings us all here is the circles that we hang, right? It's not about playing tennis. I mean, you can join a YMCA or something or play in the park for free. You pay the price because of the hang after, your friends, the network. And that's all coming off the proper facilities. Including a nurturing culture of friendship and fellowship for members. That's what I just described, their families and guests, personalized service from the staff. So that's our launching point. So, what are we all about tonight? Let's just be the best version of ourselves. Let's be the best GCC that we can be. And how do we get there? Where are we now? And what's the journey going to look like? So, before we dive in, I always ask, take a refresher course on what you're paying now. So, my wife and I, Carol and I, we're paying $580 a month. $490 of that is operational dues, and $90 of that is capital dues. So, take a look at where you are, because we'll reference a lot of these points as will the rest of the team here. But just to give you a point of reference, operational is the day-to-day. That's what pays for our heat and our electric bills, our staff, our our management, our insurance, all of our overhead. That is a zero-sum game, meaning as much as we collected that operational dues from each of us, at the end of the year, the profit and loss, we're a nonprofit, so we don't really say profit and loss, but whatever they call it on the P&L statement, it's got to really target zero, right? So if we have less operational dues, we have less of an experience. It's all about our experience. We have, and then the capital is what the buildings and the facilities. So skip that one. How we previously managed our finances, and this is going back, and Ken will talk about the evolution of the business. Our club, like most clubs, was a member-owned co-op. We couldn't put a grass court in the back of our own home, so we got together. They got together with their friends and financed the grass courts in the same way we do it now. And as a member-owned club, that evolved, we had a checking account of which we paid all the bills, all the operational, all that capital dues was blended together into one big account. And we tried to, our club, like most clubs, just tried to keep it straight. You're paying your $90 or whatever it was back then for capital, and maybe that went to the Pico bill when it needed to be paid the Pico bill. So it was not very scientific. Let's put it that way. So how do we do it now? Everything is very linear. Everything's broken up. Your operational dues go in one account. Your capital dues go in a separate account. And we created a third account as well. And I think that from the GCC context, it's really important. This is the screen class, which we call our rainy day fund, right? So I mentioned earlier before we got started, we have some longtime members. You've seen the ups and downs of this club. When it was down, it was really down to the point that 10 years, 5, 6, 10, whatever it was years ago, when everything was blended together and membership levels were dropping, we got to the point where we started hitting our line of credit and we maxed that out. And then we were running out of cash. And we got to the point where operationally, the lowest of the low point when we hit rock bottom as a club is the payroll checks were bouncing. And what better week to start bouncing payroll checks than Christmas week? So you can ask long time team members like Tony or Mona. They'll tell you what happened. I mean, from their perspective, that's the lowest of the low, bottoming out. So when we got our legs back underneath us, the finance committee and the board decided to start this extra account, which was putting $10,000 a month away, just so right now our line of credit, we have zero money out on the line of credit. We have our full line of credit. We haven't touched it in 6, 7, 8 years, so we're in pretty good shape. And this rainy day fund, this $10,000 a month, we have about $400,000 in it. So this is not an emergency meeting. This is, as Millie mentioned earlier, how we plan for the future and make sure our operation is healthy. So, and just for a point of reference, combined between all of them, we have about $1.9 million in the bank. So, not desperate times, but desperate as far as we need a strategy going forward and how to rebuild this place. So, at this point, Ken Butler takes over. So just to give you, and it kind of references it in what I had said in those last few slides. The business has become very numbers driven, very stats driven. That's what the benchmarking does. And the best analogy is baseball. I said, you went to the Phillies game 10 years ago, or our whole lives growing up. There was batting average, RBIs, and home runs. Those were the three statistics you got. Now you go to a Phillies game on the outfield, they have 25 different stats. I don't even know what half of them are. And players get played on wins over replacement players. And I don't even know the formula for that. But it's very statistics driven. And Ken is going to go in and he's got those numbers. He tells you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. He and his company are experts. They'll tell us what a assistant tennis pro should make. And we can compare that across 2,000 clubs. We can compare our debt ratios, what the proper initiation fee for a club like ours should be, based on our assets and our dues ratio and 20 members. How much a hamburger down at the grill should cost. He has all those stats, thousands and thousands of stats, and that's what we're using to make us the best club we can be. So without further ado, Ken, the clicker is yours.
All right. Hi, good evening, folks. It's all a mighty crowd. All right, very good. So, my name is Ken. I'm the executive director for club benchmarking in the Mid-Atlantic region. It means I handled our private club relationships with clubs from Long Island, New York City, all of New Jersey, PA, Delaware, Maryland, and through Virginia. So I see quite a few clubs. I got all those small towns of New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, and everything in the mix there. I've been in the private club business since the mid '80s when I graduated college at Whiteman University. So I grew up around this area, and then went right into private club management shortly there after graduation, and I've been doing it ever since, really, except for a little bit of a U-turn. I owned a restaurant for a while, so it just means I have thicker skin than most. At any rate, so 5 years ago, I joined the team at Club Benchmarking after being in private clubs for almost 30. And I was one of the first clients of Club Benchmarking back in 2009 when they first introduced the service. And it's been a master's class ever since then. So it's been one of the best things I ever did. And I'm very, very happy and proud to be, with you here at Germantown too. So this has been a great process. But like I said, we've been out there since 2009. The reason why we exist is because our founder, a guy named Ray Cronin from Boston, who was an engineer and a Harvard MBA, and who was doing startups for high technology firms, working with venture capitalists. He became a member of his board at his club up in Boston. So he's not a private club guy. I mean, he is now, but he wasn't then. And he was surprised to learn that they were making important decisions for the club, just shooting from the hip, basically, just based on opinions and all that. And of course, he piped up and asked us, says, "Well, what are we basing our discussions on?" And he quickly found out that club wasn't using any kind of background or aggregated data to make decisions from. It was just internal knowledge or local knowledge, if you will, and many of that was, probably bad assumptions. So he said, "There's got to be some source," and he dug into it, spent months and months looking at our industry and finding that there was no source of aggregated data by which to go from in the private club industry. He learned that it's a very fragmented, even a cottage industry, if you will. There's only about 3,300 clubs in the United States of substance. And so those would be clubs that have $1 million or more in annual revenues. Just to contrast that, you're right around the $7 or $8 million range here at Germantown. So you're kind of right in the middle of the whole group, including clubs that have well over 200 million a year. So it's a very fragmented industry. And so over the years, by studying that data, now we have over 60 people on the team. So we study the financial results of, over 2,000 clubs every year. We've been doing it since 2009. We have a team of research and data scientists that are constantly doing regression analysis and understanding the numbers and trying to correlate so that we can get some insights that clubs can use to have a conversation about what they need to do going forward in any number of ways, including member satisfaction, employee engagement, and capital planning, which we're going to talk about here. There's been a lot of things that we've learned over the years. And then we developed a software development team to actually develop software tools for clubs based on the insights that our research team has learned. And so there's a number of things that we've brought to the industry that have been very helpful for managers like myself and Millie and boards of all kinds. So that's kind of a quick background of who we are and how we got started. So I'll just give you a backdrop here. This slide is a visual representation of the state of the industry. Okay. And it's true that our industry really does separate itself out in 25% chunks. Now, whether you're talking about clubs with golf or clubs without golf, I'll just have a remark on that. Out of the 3,300 clubs across the United States, about 20% are clubs like yourselves. So you don't have a golf course, but you have recreational facilities and dining facilities. And so when we benchmark you, we don't benchmark you against golf clubs. We benchmark you against other clubs that are very similar to you from a amenity standpoint. But even so, even the 20% of clubs that we're going to talk about here, still separates itself. Like 25% of Clubs without golf are in that red bucket there, where they're shrinking actually financially. They're not doing well. To the orange bucket, where there's some slight growth going on the balance sheet, to moderate growth. And then you have the clubs in the green bucket here that are really growing with purpose. And when we look at this and we separated it out, this is all database. This isn't an opinion really, but we usually use those 5 different bullets to kind of sort the clubs out. Number one is how robust is the membership base at a club? Okay, so the red bucket clubs have fewer members than they actually need. They actually need more. The green bucket clubs have a full membership roster, however they define that. The second piece is the actual quality and breadth of the amenity package at a club. All right, so the red buckets have a narrow breadth of amenities, and maybe those amenities might be not up to date so much. Whereas in the green bucket clubs, they have a compelling experience because their amenities have been constantly added to and updated, and they're paying attention to that. Third is probably the most important piece, and that's looking at what's going on in the club's balance sheet. Okay, and so on the red bucket clubs, we see balance sheets that actually have declining values in them. And what we'll really focus on there is really a term called unrestricted net assets. It's also called member equity. In the for-profit world, it has a couple of names, like shareholders' equity or retained earnings or something along those lines. Those terms are all synonymous. So we talk about unrestricted net assets in the club business. Those clubs there have had a declining net worth over the years. Let's say going back to 2006, which is a full generation of information. It also precedes the meltdown of 08 and 09. But those clubs have had a declining value in their net worth. And really what that comes down to is that they may be breaking even on their operating statement, which most clubs do. But from the capital perspective, they're not bringing in enough capital to reinvest back into the club. And therefore you see it in the amenities, you see it in the conditions of the facilities and all that. Subsequently, the fourth thing there is operating governance versus strategic governance. In these clubs over on the red side, the boards are very, very focused on the day-to-day, probably too focused on the day-to-day. All right. And as a result, they don't tend to move forward very quickly, if at all. And number 5 is, we've noticed this, is that in those red bucket clubs, that the membership body as a whole tends to think or behave more like customers of the organization as opposed to being owners or stewards or having that kind of a mentality. So if you contrast that, I'm not going to go through each bucket, but I will spend some time on the greens here, is that, we see they have a full membership roster. Most likely they have a waiting list that's based on actual capacities. It's not an arbitrary bylaw thing, as it can be in some places. We talked about the amenities being compelling, the membership experience that has a broad array of services and amenities, but their balance sheet looks a lot different than the red bucket club. The balance sheet has that unrestricted net assets that's actually increasing every year. And that's going to be increasing anywhere from about 3.5% on up to 6% and higher, methodically, consistently, and all that. Now, it just so happens that almost every club across this entire spread here breaks even in their operations, the day-to-day stuff. Their operating dues, the food and beverage sales all result in a break-even scenario. It's very common. In fact, we'd say about 80% of all clubs operate at break-even. The rest of them are very close to break-even. A little negative, a little positive, but right around break-even. The point being there is that the operations of the club is not the financial driver of the club anywhere. It is only the vehicle for providing the membership experience. So all the money that flows through the operations is consumed by the operation in presenting what it has to present day after day to the member. So it gets exhausted. And so at the end of the year, being a break even, there's never any money left over to reinvest back into the club. And that's a very key point. So almost all these clubs are breaking even. What's the difference then is the capital income. And the capital income is your initiation fees, recurring monthly dues, or assessments primarily. There are other forms, but they're relatively de minimis compared to those three. Whoops, excuse me. I should put this thing down when I talk. But at any rate, I'm going to bounce back out of that. But so when we look at this, the big question is, why aren't all clubs in this more successful bucket? We'll say that Germantown too, I would say if you go back about 8 to 10 years, and before that, even maybe even a generation before that, was pretty solidly over on the red bucket side. Mhm. And financially, you've been emerging out of that over the last 5 or 6 years. And to the point now where you actually have some reserves and you have the ability to jump off and maybe get into a different philosophy, which is what we'll be talking about. But the reason why, what we've learned, the reason why all clubs aren't over here is really two big things and maybe a third thing. The first thing is that the clubs that are down there in the red tend to be really focused on cost cutting above anything else before even talking about growth. They tend to look in terms of efficiencies as opposed to sufficiencies or just elevating that experience. The clubs over here tend to think about it in terms of what's the value of the membership experience. In other words, are we evolving it to the point where we always have enough members and we always have enough members knocking on the door? And are we charging them enough for that experience? So an evolving evolution of services that's going through that experience, and it's vitally important because that member churn ultimately is going to be where the success or failure of a club is, and making sure that there's enough money coming in to support an operation that people want to be part of, and then it yields enough capital to keep the facilities up to date and what have you. And so those are two of the reasons. The other reasons is, let's say the business model of a private club is different than that of a restaurant or a hotel or any other hospitality organization. And it's this, and it's got a negative side and a positive side to it. Number one, our customers, the people that access the services at a club, are the members, which means you're kind of like the owners too. And even though you're the owners, or you have the ability to direct the future of the organization by virtue of being members, and yet you're the only customers that can access the services. The conflict comes in. It's like, but as members, we can set our prices for ourselves in every aspect. And that's where the problem comes in, because human nature would say that we're probably not charging our members too much, right? I mean, this is a problem across the entire. Yeah, but that's the difference between the business model of a club, which is a lot different than maybe an intuitive assumption might be. If you look at the dining rooms, for instance, it looks like a restaurant, smells like a restaurant, reads like a restaurant, but it doesn't finance like a restaurant. Okay, so I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. But those are the things that we've noticed there. It is that the more members can understand the conflicts inherent in the business model of a private club, the more likely there is to get alignment around the decisions that are actually going to be healthy for the club over time and looking forward instead of looking back. So old way of thinking versus new way of thinking before I get into the last slide here. But I think and it's a very natural thing for clubs to really be in operational governance. When they're not generating a lot of capital income, there's not a whole lot of decisions to make as to how you're going to spend money you don't have, right? And that's really where the red buckets end up being. So they end up talking about cost and they end up talking about efficiency, because that's the only they think that it seems like maybe the operations is the only place where they can actually get some money out of it. But we've learned that if there's a change of philosophy that's moving more towards strategic governance at the board level, where at the board level, the key thing from the board perspective is communicating and educating members to convince them that members it would be best for the club if the members were to think of the club as stewards or owners as opposed as being transactional customers. That leads to a growth and investment mindset, because then you start thinking about the value of the membership of the club and what's available to me and how well is it being delivered. And so then you become a club that's then competing on the value that you provide membership as opposed to the price that you charge. So the clubs that are charging the less seem to have the fewest members because the value just isn't there to support it. Whereas the clubs over here that are competing on value tend to have the most members and have the best experience. And therefore, then they're also bringing in the capital to reinvest in the club. And that's kind of a broad perspective of a cultural change from a governance perspective. The last thing that I'll speak to is the footprint concept, something that our data folks discovered a couple of years back. because it's very popular for members of clubs, boards to compare their dues and fees to other clubs that are around the area that might be like you or might be in competition with. And what we've learned is that dues and fees, both for operating and capital, can be highly quantified. And there's no relationship between what your needs at Germantown are compared to the needs at, say, Marion Cricket or other places. And so it is quite quantifiable, actually. And one of the things that we've done on the capital side is we've provided that quantification to Millie talked about it, about the process that we did when we came in and we did an asset evaluation with useful life and replacement cost analysis. And so that's a way of quantifying the actual capital needs of the club. And it's that capital generation is the lifeblood of the club going forward. And it's based on real data, not just opinions. And so with that, I will stop and answer any questions that you might have or comments. And just don't throw something at me, but you can throw questions at me, but hey.
What other non-golf places do you service around here, like other tennis clubs?
Well, Marion Cricket, Philly Cricket, which they have golf, but we have almost all the golf clubs which have aspects of what you do. And then all Long Island and New Jersey, I got dozens of them. So, yeah.
And Marion Cricket's probably similar because you don't actually get golf with that.
Right.
How are you going to answer these things later? But how is this club compared to Marion Cricket as far as on that slide from red to green?
Well, I'll tell you this: if you go back, to the early 2000s or even the 90s, you were very comparable to Marion in terms of the conditions of things and all that. It's their movement towards the green side has been step by step and very consistent over the last 15 years or so. But it wasn't always a good outlook there, just like it wouldn't in many places in Philadelphia, actually. I can't give you direct comparisons on that. That would be in violation, but I can tell you that they have made, over the last generation, a dramatic change from one condition to a good condition, and it's just from financial philosophy. Speaking of financial philosophy, though, I will say that there may be some, and there are uniquenesses in like the membership, your location, traditions, all those things make up the uniquenesses of club. But from a fundamental financial model perspective, the way you operate, the way you've been operating, the way you need to operate in the future is no different than any other club. In fact, we've learned that that's very consistent. Even in comparing clubs with golf, we all get our operating funds from the same sources and we use them in the same way. And if we were to put a pie chart up here and I would show you side by side how you spend operating dollars versus a club like Marion, you wouldn't be able to discern the difference between the two clubs. That's how really consistent it is. And it's very interesting in that regard. And yet the big difference is going to be on the balance sheets. But you see, that's where the separation starts to come. So a long-winded answer, but hopefully it's helpful. Anything else? Okay, well, I'll be here the rest of the evening. If anything comes up, happy to help. So, do I cover it on?
Back up.
All right.
But to that question, if I may chime in, it's almost getting, like I said, the pie charts match, the formulas match, and the evolution matches. And many clubs before us had the same problems. The membership neglects one component, and the club is governed by the loudest voice in the room, or maybe a persuasive board member, instead of having a blueprint. Now we're just trying to build the blueprint. We've employed club benchmarking because they have the blueprint. This is not Ken's first rodeo. He's done this at other clubs and got them to transition. Now we're trying to do it. We're frankly ahead of the curve, but we're not the first people there. So we need to buy into taking care of the whole club and all of our assets. So let's talk about that and the $23 million over 20 years that Lily alluded to in her introduction. So where are we right now? Our capital fund, that one wine glass that accumulates your $90 a month.
When we started our fiscal year starts on April 1st. So right now we are in fiscal year 2026. We started it with $750,000. We are our $90 a month collectively among all us members is going to bring in another $775,000. And also in that wine glass goes our initiation fees. So members who are new members who are paying anywhere from $10,000 to join us or less, that should, according to our budget, net us $300,000 or $1,075,000 combined, $1.875 million to play with in this fiscal year. How are we spending it? I'll go to a bigger slide. Right off the top, we spent $175,000 servicing about $2 million in debt that we have outstanding. So that comes out of that before we spend $1. But $570,000 in court projects. We are going full steam ahead on this 20-year plan and getting us into shape. So what does that mean? Grass courts, obviously that big project that started 2 weeks ago. Taking up the whole subsurface, laser leveling it, and reseeding it with whatever the state-of-the-art rye seed combination grass it is, so that next year there are no more pitching mounds on the surface lines. You're not elevated 4 inches above everybody else when you're on the court. And that's something that should be done every 5 or 6 years. For the last 3 or 4 years, you may have seen a posse of members getting in Tim Fleming, our maintenance, our head of grounds, ear about, we need these grass courts fixed. These grass courts, what are you going to do? Now there's a plan. It's not who's going to be the loudest. They were right, but it's according to the plan. The squash courts, we did 4 squash courts over. Indoor court repairs. Right now, we're enjoying those. The court number 3 got replaced. They've all been painted. The curtains have been changed. It's got that new car smell. Our indoor courts, we're doing what we can to make them the best they can be. And in that, this year's fiscal $570,000 was the last phase of the Padel project, which was that patio out there. So that's $570,000 just in courts. $50,000 pushing our old pool down the highway, getting that repair so it's serviceable this year. $580,000 into some very non-sexy things, but keeps this place running. Things that had to be done: roofing, air conditioning, plumbing, masonry, Wi-Fi. Obviously, if you might remember in the summer, we changed the Wi-Fi. We found, I think, what was our password? Banquets 2018 was the last time we put a tweak into it. So 7 years later, we're back at it. Cameras, and then the last phase is a couple $100,000 into that elevator that's just outside the store. Which, any members ever been on it? No. I ask that every session, and nobody's ever been on it because nobody's brave enough, including myself, because it's an adventure. But now needed though, because that elevator is what's going to get grandma up to the wedding, and as well as service our different dining rooms and make us much more efficient. Had to be done. We're doing it. $300,000 into the kitchen, the wall foundation. Our walk-in coolers are as old can be, and always on one of them is always on the blink. So that's $300,000. And all this does not take into account the approaching $3 million from our insurance claim. When that above Carol's leak over there went from the sprinkler system here all the way down, knocked our main kitchen out of commission. That is none of this is reflected in that, right? So this is all above that. So this all total is $1.675 million out of our $1.875 million. So this is part of that 20-year plan. Like I said, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. We're going to make this place the best version of itself. But obviously doing that for the next 5 years doesn't work. We'll talk about the math in a second. But just to give you highlights, obviously plenty of roofing repairs. Our wall, next time you're here in the daylight, obviously not leaving tonight, you'll see that those walls outside of our fences are bellying because water is getting behind it. Cracks, air conditioning, plenty of leaks. No, sure, we could have had pictures from so many different dimensions of this club with ceiling leaks. The ballroom right next door, the dance floor is bubbling up. You can see that tonight if you'd like. And then a lot of members weren't aware, but last February, March, we had a major windstorm where it was 60-mile-an-hour winds, and the whole balcony collapsed in onto itself. And when it fell, it sheared off the split HVAC systems. So this thing falling, which was a couple weeks after our $3 million claim, cost us, remember, $60,000 out of our pockets. So, because, and it's all state of repairs, patches, Band-Aids, all of that, holding this place together. So, based on, what was the number? 1.67 million? Uh-oh, my battery's dead. Of income, 1.7, whatever. Here we go. Don't do math in your head.
Down there.
Yeah, hold on.
1.675.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I said, don't do math in your head over 40 years old. Okay, so here's our projected income if we keep the system the way it is for the next 5 years. $1.14 million and roughly $1.2 million and change for 5 years. So we will bring in $6.12 million if we maintain the status quo. But in that 23 million, we're going to spend a third of that in the first 5 years. Makes our capital needs $8.58 million over the next 5 years. So obviously the math doesn't work. But in those 5 years, it's a laundry list of things that we're going to do. I think that capital report, the one that Club Benchmarking put together for us originally, had 503 different items. In that first 5 years, that $8.58 million includes, these are just some highlights. Next year, 2027, as I mentioned, we're in 2026 right now. That work that's being done, laser leveling all of the grass courts right now as we speak, we're doing that to the clay courts and the hydro courts. So we're getting all of our tennis courts in shape to be the best version of ourselves. We're buying some grounds equipment. We're doing seating for squash. I never knew how much they needed that seating until I was watching those videos of that last weekend when they had that guest tournament, Longman versus whatever it was, and the place was packed. And they get it on over there. Yeah, so seating for squash. Clubhouse ballroom air conditioning updates. I'm sure that gets you all very excited. Clubhouse flooring repairs. Ladies' locker room upgrades. The following year, heat pumps. All the pool umbrellas and chairs are going to get replaced. The parking lot. Very unsexy, but it needs to be done. It gets re-asphalted. The men's locker room updates. Bar cooler replaces. 2029 banquet kitchen updates. Snack bar updates. Software system. We use a software that's over 30 years old with a cursor going up and down. Joe.
Tom, where is the yellow building?
Hang in there, Joe. We got
It's a
you.
historic property. It is the oldest 19th century original part of this campus. It's been ignored for over 20
You are
years.
absolutely correct, and it is in here. So in that first phase, didn't make the highlights. That's $1.2 million over, and we'll talk about that. But in the first 5 years, I think even starting next year, $300,000 is going into that yellow house just to make sure it stands and can get to the next step. But that,
26.
yes. So we have $300,000 going into it next year. We had engineers come out last year to, again, write the recipe of what we have to do to make that place stable and get that going. But that goes to the point that you raised earlier. Like, how did things get done? It was always somebody would in the back of the room would always say, "What about the yellow house?" And then somebody in this corner of the room would say, "Well, what about the courts? What about?" And I'm sure board after board after board, including boards that I run, well, just kick that can down the road. But now it's time. We can't ignore. They went through every nook and cranny of this place. They spent a month. So $300,000 is on this list. But they didn't obviously make it, but it will appear in other slides. So hang in there. So we talked about software and like the following year, indoor tennis building. All the courts are getting replaced, not just that court 3. So they all get new substrate and everything. This is where I think it gets really interesting. Like 2030, the Padel Court turf replaced. Meaning those Padel courts, which are 2 months, 3 months old, the prescription is the turf is supposed to last for 4 years. So in 2030, it gets replaced. And Padel furniture updates. 2031. This project that's 2-3 weeks old, tearing up and laser leveling the grass courts, we're doing it again because every 5 or 6 years to be the best version of ourselves and professionals, there's a science to that business. Say in 5 years, you need to redo it. Hydro court rehab, grounds equipment, site planning, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And if you really want to see it, it's in Millie's office. Make an appointment, she'll go over. But that's what we're getting. So, $23 million. In the first 5 years, is a third of it. 5.579 in the next 5 years. And the last 10 years, we need less than $10 million a year. But we're here tonight to figure out how we get through these next 5 years. And if we get the right plan and the right outlook, the strategy is going to take care of itself. And that's where we are. So getting there, you don't need to see those numbers, even though they are on your tables and you will be sent a PDF version of what's on your table. All you need to see from where you're standing is that this is all red. I'm a foot from it. I can't read it without my glasses. But it's all red, right? The math doesn't work based on where we are now. So then the question becomes, how do you turn that bottom line to black? I'm going to hand this over to Joe so he can tell you and talk about the 20 different ways this ad hoc committee looked at solving this riddle.
Thanks, Tom. So, as Billy and Tom mentioned, we had the ad hoc committee come in. We met 5 different times, about 3-hour sessions, and we went through a lot of different scenarios. So, really, kind of what we did was taking a look at deep diving everything we just went over here in the last hour or so. Taking a look at the current outlook, that asset study, going through line by line of all of the assets, timing, current funding, and identifying where we can be able to get funding. So as Ken mentioned earlier, on the capital side of things, we're looking at 3 different ways in which to get capital income. It's the initiation fees that our new members are paying. It's the capital dues that $90 a month that you all are paying right now. And then it's the possibility of an assessment. So in the platform with Compass and Club Benchmarking, we have the ability to put in all of our different scenarios, run the reports, get those spreadsheets. And so at the end of the day, at the end of the 5 sessions, we went through almost 20 different strategies. And where the committee landed on to propose to the board to move forward with this process was really this one strategy. So the assessment was discussed at length. There's a big number that needs to happen, but as Millie said earlier on, want to be very careful of that approach of how big of a number would be coming out to membership of needing to pay and maintaining the current culture and the current membership. And so the other element of that too is, as we saw here, this is a 20-year plan here. This is not a one-time need. It's going to be something we need over time. And so really that should always come back down to capital dues. And so started going through those scenarios of how we would increase those. And again, trying to soften the blow as much as possible. The approach came down to a 3-year increase. So in the first year, going from that $90 a month would be increasing by $60 a month to $150. The subsequent 2 years would be increases of $75 per month. So ultimately, it would be a $300 per month capital dues. We did talk through from an attrition standpoint of members leaving the club because of these increases in fees. So last year we were about 5% attrition at that renewal period of time. We did increase that slightly here to about 8%. New memberships, we do anticipate even with these increased fees, we're going to have new members coming in. We are seeing members. We increased this last year initiation fees from $8,000 to $10,000, and we're still seeing new members coming in. Happily, or coming in, paying, and seeing the value of the club. Now, in that first 3 years or so in the modeling, we have basically a flat or slightly declining membership of this increase. So we wanted to be as conservative as possible when it came to membership counts here of what we're projecting for revenues. We did talk about initiation fees, and so as the club is reinvesting in itself, you all are paying in, we're improving the facilities. New members coming in should be paying their fair share of coming in for the new facility. So we have that on a biannual basis. So if it's about $2,000 of an increase each year. So 2 years from now, be anticipating 12 to 14, so on. Yeah.
Just can you remind us quickly just
Yeah.
what our approximate membership is now?
Yep.
And just globally hearing that we're essentially losing members. You're projecting that we're going to be losing members every year.
Yeah. So in essence here, we're anticipating losing about 10 members per year. Full member equivalents right now, we're at 550 members. So overall, we have about 775 members or so. And then as we kind of go into the next slide here, we did talk through as far as debt goes. So that was another scenario too, is, you know, how can we solve some of these problems and taking care of things? Tom mentioned we have just under $2 million worth of debt for previous projects. You know, the concept was, you know, could you go out and get more debt and take care of all of this? We went back again to the foundation and the fundamentals that really shouldn't be borrowing debt to be taking care of deferred maintenance. But when we do take care, we take a look at this debt for a new project. So one of the other elements back here is we then talked about strategic projects. So everything we've been talking about is in this capital study of our existing footprint and our existing assets, how to replace those and maintain those. But what would happen if we decided we wanted to do something above and beyond what we currently have right now? And so in taking a look at this funding model, if we could get this increase to take care of what we need to over the next 3 to 5 years for the deferred items, where would we be from a funding standpoint to be able to take care of additional projects? So further enhancements to security. So, and one thing to point out here as well, that this committee was not in charge of what we're actually doing and how we're taking care of things. You know, we weren't talking about what type of lounge chair was at the pool or what type of diving board it was. It was high level conceptual of, we want to be able to do a project, and future boards, future committees would have the ability and the funding to make those types of decisions. So things like security enhancements, whether that's a front gate, a check-in station, further locked doors, things of that nature. Yellow House. So as Tom mentioned, we do have in the back of the system the basic improvements needed of the Yellow House in the phase 1 that need it from a structural standpoint. But phase 2 gets into more of what can be done downstairs in the current pro shop area right now, as well as the bathrooms to make that more functional and useful. To down in 2035 of a phase 3 of what could be done on the second. But then we get into, this is where it gets kind of more interesting, is when we get into more of the pool aspect. As Tom mentioned, right now we're spending $50,000 to $75,000 a year to band-aid the pool and keep it moving forward. It's a 60-year-old pool and it's going to need to get replaced. And so these first 3, you know, start to become, they are strategic in my opinion, of we have the decision to make it, but it is going to be obligatory at some point in time that we're going to have to make these decisions. So we have that phased over a 2-year period of time. There's going to be some upfront costs as far as designs, demolition goes regarding the pool. But at that time, it's going to be, we're going to look to make the best $5 million pool that we can. So that's the pool, that's the seating, that's the snack bar. It's all of the elements within that. And then moving forward, you know, just conceptually, we wanted to talk through in 8 years, you know, is there a rackets project that we would want to do? You know, is there a new court service? Is there a bubble on certain types of courts? You know, are there more indoor courts or expansion of the indoor facility to, you know, beyond in the clubhouse, beyond just redoing the floors, redoing the ceilings and the HVAC systems? Is there some sort of a redesign that will take a look at a bigger level project? So again, these are small in front of you, and as Tom mentioned, you get this in PDF. But as Tom's slide before, all red, got all black here down at the bottom. So over the course of the 10-year period, it's a $27 million investment into the property. About half of that is the obligatory needs that we need. The other half is going to be those aspirational or improvements of those strategic investments. Increasing the debt service from the 1.9 right now at the end of the period would be closer to 2.8 with $2.3 million in cash reserves for capital. So maybe a little over a year's worth of a typical investment. Any questions on the committee's findings and approach? Yeah.
So year 1, you're 60 a month, and then year 1, it's 60 plus 75 a month.
Yes.
So year 2, and then you're adding up. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about why not have a inflow of money if everybody pays $2 or $3 grand?
So we did talk about that as far as the assessment element of it. The committee came back pretty strongly, their feelings of the attrition levels that we were anticipating here would be significantly higher. And we did that with some of the approach and feedback from club benchmarking as well. When we have those bigger numbers in there, we typically do see that higher attrition within there. And then that does get into, we'll be getting into a little bit of the operating side as well. If you go down that route and if you do hit that assessment number, that is going to impact us on the operating side of things as far as dues go for general operating levels.
I have two questions. One, and this is from other focus groups too. I was here then. You did that before, where we gave like a big assessment fee and then the projects never actually happened. So it landed really a sour taste in people's mouths because then, other things happened before the pandemic and the projects actually never went through, but they did get the assessment fee and pay it. So I think that's another thing, right? Like that doesn't, it felt disingenuous, I guess, in that perspective. But my other question you just talked about, from a strategic perspective, once we get past kind of the past maintenance and all this, thinking about, because I'm on the member engagement committee, how does any of this extra capital, money gains come back to member engagement, which ends up being operational? You know what I mean? It's kind of, there's like an ebb and flow between member engagement, like to make sure that there's things that kind of, I'm going to get this prices to whatever, that's the experience that we also get.
Right. And we're going to get into that a little bit more here now with the operating side of things. I think the key thing to think about this as well is having that the foundation of the facility in good shape will be able to allow us to expand on that experience of not having to be able to, or not having to run around with leaks and things like that to be able to compensate. The other element on the assessment side of things is just the power of compounding with the capital dues. So being able to have that as an ongoing basis and a steady flow of income moving forward and not having to come back here in 4 to 5 years to say that we're going to need to do another assessment to be able to do X, Y, or Z.
Tom just told us again about not being over 40 and doing math in our heads.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking to myself, so I'm like that family person. How much am I going to leave in 3 years? I just need to know what that is. That was
I've got some graphics on.
Okay.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
I'm naive to how decisions are made in the club. I'm new to conversations like this here, but I was, in terms of this looks like Club Benchmark made lots of wonderful recommendations. Some of them are clearly essential, deferred maintenance, all this, I'm totally behind it. Some of the other ones like laser leveling, certain courts and such would be, I don't know, that seems like an extra in my mind. Or seating, I was at the squash event, there were lots of people, I sat in the aisle, but I was totally happy. I don't need extra seats. I know that's a tiny expense, but I was curious, so it seems like in the process, it's already been identified, which of these proposals, and it looks like, is it most of them, or are there a bunch that you decided not to go ahead with, and where is that decision made? Is that within a property committee, or actually, I sense we're past that point now. You guys have identified what needs to be done, the essentials, and some, I think, the optional stuff.
So
And now we're figuring out how to fund it.
So when club benchmarking came in, it went through every single thing we own and put that on a spreadsheet. The initial report that came back said that we needed to invest about $8 million this year. Obviously, that even with the math we did here, that doesn't work even more so. So what we went through from a management team perspective is we went through and identified and brought through. So the indoor courts is a really perfect example. That was on the list on the initial report. Everything should be replaced over at indoor right now. Part of that building is over 25 years old. The courts, and so what we ended up doing is we talked through. We had a specific need within Court 3 that needed to be replaced and repaired, and we were able to identify that we could be able to get by with a repaint and kind of a small resurface on all of these elements to be able to get that down to 4 years later, where we'll be able to do the full project within that. So it was a lot of taking a look at where are we right now with it. What is our opinion? Everything's going to have a useful life to it, right? And should be identifying it. And in the first 5 years, we were looking to what makes the most sense financially, of where are the biggest needs. Now, over the course of the 20 years here, those laser leveling, it needs to take place several times within that 20 years. Now, in future boards and committees, we can argue as to whether or not we can put it off for another year or put it off for another 2 years. But when we're taking a look at it from a big picture standpoint, those numbers are going to be in there. And so we wanted to make sure that every single asset is within.
And I'll say, a lot of this comes, how it's generated initially, primarily is from committees. So the benches have been in there for a long time, like years. And so Squash has said, before I even got here, Squash has said for years, we need these benches. We need this. We have GFS. They come in, they play squash. We've got to have this. We've got to have this. So it comes from committee, and then it goes to management, and then it goes onto a list, and then we take that to strategic. That's typically the method by which it goes. The pool is another one, coming from pool and fitness committee, and even from member engagement. It's like, it's wear and tear. It needs something. Then we have, contractors come out and look and they go, yeah, it's recessing, it's sinking a little. We can see there's water loss. We need to do some evaluations. So, and then we are able to prioritize that and let the board know in committees based on other projects. In the future, what will happen is once we get into these aspirational fun things that we want to do, it will be more of a member generated vote. Right? What do you want to do with that 3 million in tennis? That's not for us to decide. That's for you all to decide. What do you want to do in the clubhouse? That will be a committee effort, a construction committee, or whatever. There will be other things that will probably pop up that will be cool and we'll want to add, and that will be in your hands as membership.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, and before we jump in on this slide, you asked about membership numbers and what really needs to be strategic and more than aspirational. So while this pro forma was put together, it was done conservative, maybe hopefully overestimating how many members we're going to lose over the next 3 years. But Ken can reinforce this. But when you do that pool over and build the best $5 million pool that we can do, then it turns, right? And then membership. It's anticipated and historically proven that membership grows quickly when you have a pool that's heated better, longer season because it's got a cover or whatever the best $5 million pool we can buy is. So I think that's important. And as far as more courts, but right now our challenge is to make those 54 courts that we have, we as co-owners of this place have the best courts that they can be. So let's change for a second and talk about operation. But I think the capital side, that $90 a month, the case has been made. Let's talk about the operations, that zero-sum game. The gold on this chart is the industry. So you can see the profit margin. Really can't say the word profit. The what is it called?
Operating result.
Operating result. The operating result for most clubs is 2%. Just a little cushion in there in case something changes. These are your COVID years, and I think most of us are familiar with what happened during COVID to private clubs. Everybody got a big jump. This is GCC, the blue, right? So we're here, and then around 2014, we start trending, right? And I alluded to this earlier in that we were definitely going in the wrong direction. Membership was shrinking, but the membership experience was not shrinking at the rate that our revenue was shrinking. And that's what happens when the operational dues aren't enough, the experience needs to go down. It's got to stay zero, but we're losing close to 5%. So then COVID comes along and membership starts growing as it did in all clubs. And then for GCC's sake, there was a threefold effect in here. First and foremost, there was the PPE money, the government subsidies that for payroll. GCC, someone had the foresight, and it was actually as a board member at that time, I was actually a committee member at that time. We actually had business interruption insurance, so we benefited from $200,000 incoming in that. So we get that money, while at the same time our labor, our business here is mostly labor, right? Our labor needs weren't as needed, so obviously our margins went up.
And I always say, and some people disagree with this, but this is the era of the $40 macaroni and cheese dinner. When and I had a member come up to me and said, "Hey, Tom, is this possible? I just had macaroni and cheese and a glass of wine. I spent $40." And that was manager mindset at the time that food and beverage had to make money. When actually now food and beverage, as everybody at this table practically alluded to at one point or another, is an amenity, right? We don't make money in tennis. We don't make money in squash. It's what you pay your dues for. Well, that food and beverage experience should be what you pay your dues for. No business in their right mind would open to serve for lunch and serve 4 lunches, right? But as club members, you want to expect that. If you have a business client or somebody you want to take in, you want to take them to your club. And that's why F&B, among many other reasons, should lose money. But anyway, so now COVID ends and we are back on this line, right? So this is 2024. Like I said, we are in fiscal year 2026 right now. So let's talk about the operating side of fiscal year 2026. Millie and Joe are putting together that budget back in January for the fiscal year that starts in April. I get a call that there's a problem. They do the budget to sort of give us the same experience we had last year. And Tom, we've got a problem. We're going to lose $400,000. And that's obviously not acceptable. And the board went over that, and we asked them to go back to the drawing board and redo that budget and say, what can we do? And the board decided after a lot of belt tightening to lose $100,000 this year and to take that out of the rainy day fund. But obviously that's not a long-term plan. So why losing $100,000? Because, like I said, we're labor intensive and labor prices have gone crazy. Our utilities, utilities, what's doing at your own home, and insurance. Our insurance is off the charts. In the best such cases, you have 2 huge claims in 2 years. You know which direction we're going with that. So obviously our operating margin is losing. So, now I think I like to talk about, so what did that $300,000 difference, $400,000, what did that mean to each of our experience? And there is no one great thing. We didn't close the bar or whatever. It's 1,000 paper cuts that are affecting us. And I made a list of just some highlights of what it means and where it's affecting us. So right off the jump, we lost a high-end tennis pro, left us. We never replaced them. That's the way you can save some money, right? But what does that matter? Well, with fewer tennis pros, you have less member engagement. You have less clinics. You have less Davis Cup-like events if you're a tennis player. And from those events and all that camaraderie and whose team, and I'm on the red team and the green team and the blue team, that's where the friendships are fostered. And that affects the club and it affects the experience and our time together. I'm going for my glasses on. I want to read this. We didn't have, with a beautiful new padel courts, we should have had a pro for padel. And frankly, if you're a pickleball player, our pickleball is on its life support system because we don't have enough coverage there to get that program going or to have clinics to get members trying padel and involved. I mean, the current staff is doing the best they can. We just don't have enough coverage, nor can we afford to, because free clinics are free to us as members, but they're not. They certainly cost the club stuff, cost the club money to have pros there. But so they went by the wayside. Obviously, here's my pet peeve right here: personnel cuts in housekeeping. Right? Last year, you come in off the tennis courts in the summer, there'd be 3 people vacuuming behind you and keeping the place clean. The place isn't as clean as it was before. If you go into the dining room and look at the carpet, it's filthy. Look at the carpet outside of that beverage area where you can grab a drink or the coffee machine. It's filthy. And that's just because we can't keep up cuts. some of you know, I've been injured for the last few months. I've been walking around the place instead of playing tennis. And you go and you see in the far reaches of the grass courts, there's Gatorade bottles. And we shouldn't be that way. Best version of ourselves. That's not the best version of ourselves. If you use the pool, last year we had 2 full-time managers down there. This year we went to 1. So what does that mean? That means you have less supervision, less people keeping the ship running tight. And the cracks show in that, in how long it takes you to get your food at the snack bar, in how well the operation of the personnel down there is clicked together. We said for the last few years, it is our mission to become an employer of choice. And all the facets that mean, and we're talking the talk. This year we didn't really walk the walk. We sort of treaded water. We didn't go backwards, but we certainly didn't get to the point that we aspire to. I'm particularly proud of us as a community because we do support the team that takes care of us here. I can see it in the holiday fund. I can see it at the applause that those folks get 5 years, 10 years when they're acknowledged at the annual meeting. But we didn't do anything to make their experience better. They got, for the most part, 2% raises, which certainly doesn't keep up with inflation. These folks here, they're holding it together with picking shit from matchsticks, frankly, as one of my professors used to say. Part of my language, but just keeping the members on, keeping the personnel on board, whether that's at the entry level or whether that's at the highest level. 2% isn't going to fly next year. We have to fix this, or again, anticipate the operational experience taking another step backwards. So, where are we? On the operational side, Joe mentioned that $60 increase. That $60 increase on the capital side. Our bylaws, just to give you a little background, have these guardrails on them that say that our operational dues cannot increase more than 3% a year or CPI. So CPI this year will be around 3%. So 3% change. That doesn't get us back to that $400,000 deficit. But a 15% one-time change, that's our healthcare expense. I saw that 15%. Here we go. If we increase the dues for one time for 15%, it makes up that $400,000 deficit. We can close a lot of these gaps I just ran through in the 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 paper cuts that we as members are suffering. So now, what's it going to cost you? In our most expensive category, right now, I mentioned my wife and I, family, paying $580 a month, $490 and $90. That goes to that $490 with a 15% increase goes to $564. That $90 with a $60 increase goes to $150, or so $714 over $580. It's $134 a month increase. As an individual athletic, you're paying $435 all in. You'll go to $547 or $112 more per month. So you'll spend $1,300 or so more per year if you're an individual, and you'll spend about $1,500 more per year for the whole all-in capital and operational. If you're family, if you're a pool or something like that, it's obviously less. This is the
question.
Yes.
What's the percentage of people we have under 40? Why are they paying half as much as an 8-year-old for the individual athletic membership?
Well, I think it's a commonly accepted private club procedure to entice people under 40 to join the club. And I gotta tell you that those green bucket clubs, it is 35, right? But as you make your way to the red bucket, that gets older because, and as Ken said, you're doing things out of desperation to try to grab members. When you're stronger here, there are clubs out there that have no discount on your age. But really, as far as membership goes, the average member, the people that join our club, and pretty typical, are 42 years old, right? But 42 years old with 2 kids is your most common target. But as far as this club goes, and our exact numbers, Joe, any what?
16.
Oh yeah, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. Right, we have a chart going all the way back. Bear with me.
Still 16.
Still 16.
You can go back the other way now.
Yeah, thank you.
Not waste time.
All right, fair enough. But okay, so it's on your table. Every group is mentioned on your table, from pool, family, individual, and all that. To that end, individuals, as far as dues go, are about 30% less than a family. As far as operational dues, as far as capital dues, we all pay $90. We would all pay $150, $225, $300. After we get out of that first year, that $134, it becomes $92 more a month, or about $1,100 a year in your most expensive category. Right now, comparing us to clubs, even though we were told earlier we should never do it, we are about 60% of the price of non-golf clubs in the area. So this closes that gap, but also makes us healthy. So this was how it was laid out. That ad hoc committee that we've been alluding to did not address operating; they only addressed capital. And this is the plan that they laid out, where everybody pays an additional $60. After that came out, there was a discussion that got some traction about: is it fair for a family of 4? Who, usually there's 2 older members, the kids are taking tennis lessons and all that, to pay the same price as a single person, right? So I ask you, when you get your survey and you're going to give feedback, what do you think about it that the capital dues increase gets weighted, where a family would pay about $20 more than the initial proposal we just ran through in capital dues? Your operating would still be the same, and an individual would pay less. So now, like I said, the family would be paying another $20 a month. The individual goes, their price increase goes from $112 to $81, $41 less per month. And in the end, the club ends up with the same amount of money based on that peak that I never made it all the way back to, based on our membership mechanism. So is that more equitable for an individual to pay less than a family? So that's something we're going to get your feedback, and the board is going to take a look at. But essentially, that is the bottom line. That is the presentation. Like, what that gets us to be the best version of ourselves. And I believe I should have just gone forward. There it is.
I was going to say, there's another one in here.
All right. And so just to give you a little background, here's the process here. So September, October, we're doing all these transparency meetings, these feedback groups. Like I mentioned, we're going to be doing, I think, 19 in total of them, only 2 more to go. And then next week, just to give you a little background, on Sunday, the board is meeting to take all your surveys and all your feedback information and adjusting it and tweaking this plan that was laid out if it needs any tweaks. Right? Get your feedback. Is it going to fly from the basic? Are we going to get approved? Or do we need to make modifications? Or do we keep compounding and growing and making ourselves the best version of ourselves based on your feedback? Meaning feedback like, should there have been an assessment? Should the pool be, we've done these meetings many times. We've had the feedback of, well, we need to do the pool quicker. We need this pool. It's the lifeblood of our, the common denominator in our club. So, whatever these surveys and comments say, we're going to take. And then we're coming back next week, Tuesday and Thursday, to speak now for everyone. If you have any other thoughts, this is how the board thought this should be tweaked. Tell us what you think. And then from after that Thursday meeting, the board is going overtime. They're staying after everybody else leaves and put any final tweaks on it if it needs it. I don't know if it really is that far off, but that is the process to make sure we have the possibility to do that. And then you will get your ballots the next day. And in that 10-day run-up to our annual meeting on November 11th, you can drop your ballot in the ballot box, or you can show up to that meeting. But those meetings on the next Tuesday and Thursday are really the last chance